classroom. And I'm your classroom teacher, Professor Hicks. And welcome again. Today, we are going to start our series, for whatever lack of a better term to describe it, on Egypt. And I'm labeling it Egypt Revisited. Why? Because I visited Egypt already. So this series, we're going to revisit some of what I did, some of my experiences, but mostly some facts today. Some facts today about Egypt. In particular, we're going to be talking facts of the Nile Valley. The Nile Valley, and how the Nile Valley civilization became or should I say, the emergence of Egypt's culture and its glory started at the Nile Valley, or in the Nile Valley. All right, so again, welcome. All right, so before we get started, there's a couple of things, some homework we need to take care of, a few things that have occurred since I've last spoken with you. But of course, the first thing we're going to do is read Dr. Clarke's history. What history is. All right, so here we go. Today I'm going to give you a longer version of it. And first we want to do our due diligence, and that is we have 2 libations to do today, one for Dr. Clarke and one for Assata Shakur. Okay, so here's Dr. Clarke. Ashe, Ashe, and Ashe. To the ancestors. We ask your permission to speak. Thank you. All right. So history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. History is also a compass where people can find themselves on the map of human geography. The role of history is to tell a people where they are and where they have been, and where they intend to be. The most important role that history plays is that it has a function of telling a people where they still must go and what they still must be. Ashe. All right, and thank you. Now, due to the overwhelming response on these videos that I've put on, I'm just flabbergasted at the response. Originally, my intent was to put them on to give everybody a taste of Egypt, particularly my experience in Egypt. But did I know the response? One video has almost 600 views. 600. The only problem with that is that I didn't get any subscriptions from that. So I'm just going to say, get it out the way, because I should. Don't forget to subscribe. It's not, I just want to let everyone know that I'm not monetized. That's something I refuse to do no matter how many subscriptions I get. I'm not doing this for money. If I was in the role of maybe Kaba Kamene, Professor Kaba Kamene, and Professor Smith, sorry about that, Professor James Small, and for what they do in the community, I'm just a little minuscule, little nothing. My job is to relay information to you to help expand your consciousness or your educational awareness. I'm acting, as I've done for the last 20 to 30 years, as a teacher. And that's why I call my website or my channel, I call it the classroom, because that's what I do. I'm not on the level of a Dr. Clarke, Professor Kaba Kamene, Professor James Smalls. Those guys have stepped into an area that I hope to achieve. And I honor them, particularly while they're alive. As my mom would say, give them your flowers while they yet live. So I give them all due respect and all due honor, but I am not them. So I'm staying in my place, and I'm, bringing this information to you. Hopefully that you like it, most of all, but most importantly, hopefully this raises your conscience a bit, as it did for me. So, with that said, let's take care of some business. So again, I was overwhelmed, overwhelmed with the response on those videos, and I'll keep putting them out there. At some time, I will stop, but I'm going to keep putting them out there because you enjoy them. But please come and jump on my YouTube channel and listen to me give you the details of what you're watching so you can understand like the image, so some of the images I put there. So today I'm going to do a little of that. All right, but before we go there, there's something else I must do, and I must honor a recent ancestor. And her name is Assata Shakur. And as many of you should know, she was a Black Liberation Army member who fled our country, lived in Cuba until her passing. And Cuba, thankful for us who love her, gave her a home for the last, 30 or 40 years. So she passed away recently, and it was big news, thank God. All right, because maybe her passing or her transitioning will enlighten others once they begin to look into her story, which is very, very interesting. I didn't want to go into the whole story here today. It's some things you need to research on your own because you get the feeling, you get the closeness, you get the gravity of what people, particularly on biographies, the gravity of what people have done and what they have done for you. Assata Shakur would fall into that category, what she has done for you. She did not get rich. She did not write books. It was not her goal to do as many of our people are doing today as it relates to entertainment, and that is to continue to consume, continue to make the riches, and do very, very little for our community. And it's unfortunate. I watch football, and I'm a football fan, and I watch these young millionaires, and, unfortunately for them, and I feel for them because they can't mention the words black. They can't say Assata Shakur. They can't talk about Egypt. They can't do any of these things if they want to maintain their income, because the powers that be, the colonizers, does not allow that. You make a decision in life where you want to go and what you want to do, like I have. I've had many opportunities to become rich and famous over the years, over my lifetime. I have a very interesting life. Yes, I do. If those are really interested, I can give you a little taste if you go on YouTube and type in GURU interview, Guru interview. It'll give you a glimpse of my early life and some of the things I've done. But moving on from that, I have not decided to move into that realm because I am for the people and I want to do something for my people. And this is the best way I can serve them. One of the other motivating factors that led me to open up a channel is the present administration that we're in. Throughout my life, my entire family have been activists, social activists in one form or the other. So I am just picking up the mantle. I'm just picking up the baton, and I'm running with it because this is what we do. And I felt with everything that's going on in our country right now, particularly as it relates to the king, that I could not just sit back and do some of the other smaller things that I was doing. I had a couple of classes online and lecturing, but this is something that I feel like, if God forbid, when the ancestors are ready to take me, I can go to my grave and say that I've done something during this terrible time. And I hate to call it a terrible time, because wherever there are challenges like such, there are opportunities. My hope is that throughout all of this that our country is going through, that we come back, emerge with a better country. A country that encapsulates everyone, where we're all taking or gaining some advantage or opportunity from this craziness that we're going. It can't last forever. The spirits know that. The African ancestors talked about these types of times. That these types of times are transitional because we're moving in a new direction. And it's your job and my job to make sure that that direction is one that is going to benefit all of our kids, specifically African and people of color, but generally all people. All people. So that is some of the impetus, some of the motivation why I'm doing this. I'm not monetized. I'm not trying to make money. I just want to share my love and my information, my knowledge as I get older, because it's not easy anymore. That I have done something that I can lay my head down and say, okay, with all the madness that happened, I made my very small contribution. And by the way, that's all we all need to do. Make our contribution, no matter how small or large it is. Make your contribution to the side so that when the things get really horrible, you might be able to say to yourself, well, I tried to do something. And when things get better, you can say, well, I lent a little hand to that situation. Hopefully things get better. There is no guarantee. There's no guarantee. I'm a historian. I've seen this time before. And most of the time, truth emerges and is the victor. So that's what we hope. But it doesn't come without work. You can't, this is not a time to sit down and pray to God that something happens to the king. No, that's not African. It's not the time to sit back and do nothing at all. God at this point, whoever your God is not taking sides. You know, I heard someone say the other day, I think it was a preacher, that God is a jealous God. See, that's not African. That's colonizing type of thoughts. Because truly, the spirits and the ancestors, and ultimately what I call sometimes the Amma, you might call Allah, someone might call Jehovah, doesn't take sides. No, God is balance. Balance. And God's direction is to keep a balance. It starts, because I don't believe in God being a he or a she. It might be a she, but it starts with nature. And that's why the Africans were great followers of nature. You see their deities with the different animal type, or what we call anthropomorphic deities who are dressed like a falcon, or Tahuti, who has the head of another. These deities named and labeled after different animal or zoo types. That's the word I couldn't find. Zoo types that we find in Egypt were not Egyptians praying to an owl, or praying to a serpent, or praying to a lion. No. The Africans studied nature, and they knew that each one of these zoo types had a different and unique ability. The falcon, for instance, is able to see further than any other species in the sky and can pinpoint its prey from thousands of miles away. So the Africans looked at that and said, hey man, I would like to have that type of vision. I would like to be able to see things well before they happen. So they used the falcon to represent Horus or Heru. And in this way, they're honoring God's nature and God's offspring, God's creation. And at the same time, as they honor that, they're honoring themselves, because we all are God, or part of God, having a human experience. Yes, God is within all of us, and we are sharing its enlightenment by having a human experience. And at some time when we get into that part of when I'm going to do something on spirituality, you're going to understand that more. that statement that we are God having a human experience. It's not far from what the Christians, the Muslims, and the Hebrews say, because they all say you also have God in you. But the Egyptians and the Africans looked at that just a little differently. So we'll get there. But my point was that I'm not monetized. So if that's something that's preventing you from subscribing, you know that's not what Professor Hicks is about. Okay? All right, let's move on because I'm trying to keep my videos a little shorter than I normally do. Let's move on. So I think we want to pour a libation out to our ancestor, Sister Assata Shakur. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Thank you. All right, so let's start with the videos first. Now, the last video I showed you was one with the Kari head video where we're in Karnak. I believe when I Petasut, which is Karnak, and we're not me, but the fellow travelers with me are imitating or emulating a visible carving on the wall. And on the wall, as I tried to show, is an image of men with bald heads carrying an ark. Now, you've heard so much about arks. Noah's Ark, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, this is the only image we have or proof, evidence we have of arks, because all the rest of them, you don't see them. Or people are failing to materialize and show where they are, what they are. Here's one you can see. And that's what's so fascinating about Egypt. All the stuff you read about in the Bible and all those things, you can find proof of what the Egyptians say in stone in Egypt. So the Kari heads are carrying the Ark of Amun, a black god who they loved, who they prayed to, who they endeared themselves to. And they're carrying this ark through a procession. And it's going to go somewhere, be placed somewhere in something we call the Holy of Holies. So Professor Ashraf Kuwaisi, he's the one who sponsored the trip, had everyone who had a bald head to line up and to emulate what these brothers did thousands and thousands of years ago. And it was a wonderful trip. Now, unfortunately, Professor Hicks could not get there because I didn't have a bald head. And only those who had bald heads were allowed to come there. All right, but it's a great procession. And research, do your research on this. The next thing was the lake scene. Now, the lake, it's African name because I try not to use the mostly Greek names and Latin names. So the name escapes me, and I went to, before I got on, I tried to go back into my books my notes that I had while I was in Egypt, but I wasn't successful. But we'll get to it because we're going to be on Egypt for quite a while, and I hope to get that information to you. But that lake scene is where the first baptismal happened. Now, why do I say the first? Because that lake is not a baptismal lake as you would think as a baptismal would take place in a church. Okay? The meaning of the baptismal process there is not the same as one that you see in a church, but it is a baptismal lake and the first one ever used. Remember, plagiarizing is what took place on a scale unbelievable. So when you go to Egypt and you start seeing things that you read about in the Bible, you start to say, oh, because the Bible was thousands of years away before it was created. There's no Abraham, John. There's no Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. There's no Genesis, Kings, Deuteronomy. There is none of those. Those are the books that are in the Bible now, but those are not the material that was in the Bible or part of the compilation of something called the Bible. These types of things, these liturgical practices were left out. And liturgical, by that I mean religious type practices. They were left out of this or one of the Bibles that most of you read. And you should know there were 16 Bibles. The Vulgate, St. James Bible. I used to go through this all the time, but you research this. Yes, you guys are reading probably the most recent version of a Bible. So that lake is the scene of a baptismal. But I don't want to confuse it with the Christian baptismal, but a baptismal nonetheless. The other picture of Ramesses II and Abu Simbel, that picture reminds me, as I put in some of the couple of brothers in the neighborhood. It also is proof that Africans were the progenitors of the first to sixth dynasties. From the first to the sixth dynasties were all African. These are the dynasties where the pyramids were built. There are no pyramids built after the sixth dynasty. None. The knowledge, the know-how, the skill is all been lost. That's why they cannot be replicated. The latest story, I think about 15 years ago, a group of Japanese skilled architects and archaeologists went and tried to build a pyramid. Total failure. Look it up. Japanese build pyramid. Look it up. You can't do it anymore. So, with that said, that image, what you see there, is Ramesses II. And finally, the pyramids, the Great Pyramid that everyone loved. That's the one that got 500 and something different views, almost 600. I even got a message from, I think it was Facebook or someone saying, yo, keep building your site. I'm not trying to build. I'm trying to provide information. And that site is called, not a pyramid, it's called a mer. M-E-R, mer. So we call pyramids by their true African name is a mer. And that is the first pyramid or the first mer that we saw. And it was magnificent, stupendous, and amazing. Overwhelming as well. To capture that all, you couldn't, I didn't really get it until almost I was leaving. Where you're flying over Egypt and you see all three pyramids on the plateau. And you really get it. Because when you first get there, it's hard to accept that human beings built this. That's why you got all these crazies talking about aliens. Listen, African history has been repressed for so long. Now that aliens become something people are talking about, now another way we repress African history by saying aliens did it. What a smack in the face. All the ancestors must be turning every time someone says that. Why? Because in the world can imagine that African people did such a thing. What? I can get it. I get it. From where we are now, it's very hard to conceive that we did that, but we did. And there's so much proof. Proof. That's why I call myself a scientist, because I only go by evidence. My family, I say that to my family, even when we're talking about, I don't want to hear nothing, show me evidence. And the evidence is there. The evidence of the writings in the Bible, the evidence of the Hebrew Bible, the evidence of the Quran. All of those things are there for you to see. You go, oh my God. Oh my God, I thought I read this in Yes, you did. You read in the Bible. Because Egypt has been invaded so many times. And I believe I gave some inaccurate information. It was the Persians who were the first invaders. They had two invasions. Then came the Greeks. Then came the Arabs. Then came the British. And I might have gone a little out of order. But I wanted to correct that it was the Persians first. They had two invasions. One in 535 and another one I think in 343. Forgive me, but do the research. You can always comment and ask me and I can get it right for you. So we got that out the way. So my next video, we're going to talk about how Egypt's glory came from the south. Because, you know, one of the things I find that's really horrible, and why it's important to know that Egypt's glory came from the south. I find it horrible that Egypt gets all the love. But who did Egypt gain this glory from? Where did they get this? It all came from the south. It all came from the south. That's why Egyptians have a southern orientation. And I'm going to let you hear a quick video in my next session coming up soon by a great historian, no longer with us, European. Not all Europeans were colonizers. Not all Europeans were bad people. But we must shout out those that were. And I continue to do that. So my next video, I'm going to give you a taste of a short video. It's not going to be on here. I'm just going to let you listen so you can understand that everything that you love about Egypt did not begin in Egypt. It began in Kush. Today you might better recognize it as Sudan, and the Greeks called it Nubia. So when I get back to you and rebroadcast again, I will begin with that particular sound bite so you can understand where Egypt got its glory. Okay? And with that said, about to go dinner time, I'm going to say Ashe, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Thank you.